Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Board Gaming Doctor. My name is Phil, and I'll be your Board Game Doctor today. In this episode, I go over my first impressions of Darwin's Journey, a 2023 release designed by Simone Luciani and Nestor Mangone, art by Paolo Voto, published by Thundergrift Games. This is a game for 1 to 4 players. It plays in about an hour to 2 hours. Complexity is 3.87 out of 5 on the Board Game Geek complexity weight scale. Its overall rank right now is 157, and overall average rating is 8.2 out of 10. As an overview, this is a worker placement track advancement game symbolizing the discoveries that Darwin made through his tour of the Galapagos Islands. For 5 rounds, you place workers on the board, taking actions, mostly to advance on the exploration and navigation tracks, and also to improve your workers' abilities to take actions, gaining gold, fulfilling objectives, and to hopefully research the flora and fauna of the islands to bring back to the museum to score the most victory points at the end of 5 rounds. So what makes this game good? First of all, this game harbors tough worker placement. In this game, the actions that you can take by your workers are determined by the color and number of wax seals next to them, limiting them to where they can go, but also dictating how strong of an action they can take at certain spots. This creates a strategic notion that obtaining wax seals early in the game can be a great investment to making sure your workers can take improved actions later on in the game. When I first approached this game, I failed to do so, and I felt constricted the later the game went on because I did not have enough wax seals. This requirement creates tough decisions on what to focus your resources on, which gets into the next point of tight resource management. The main currency in this game is gold, and you can get gold by advancing on the tracks and ultimately researching animals to deliver to the museum, but also you can unlock better actions on the worker placement board using gold, and you can do so to quote-unquote own a certain spot on the worker placement board where others may be required to give you gold to use that spot. There are many ways to spend your gold on, and as I'll get into with the next point, your decisions on what to spend your gold on can be agonizing. So the third feature of this game are the many good options that are listed and presented to you in the game. You not only have the choices of how to upgrade your workers, but also which tracks you would like to advance on, what objectives you would like to acquire, how much energy you want to spend on the correspondence area of the game, which is like an area majority minigame that grants extra actions at the end of each round if you win. And finally, you have a hand of crew cards that have objectives tied to them as well. I could see so many good options in each area of the board that it was hard for me to make the right choice every time, and I believe that is a sign of a good board game that requires further plays to get even better at it, especially at identifying the right combinations of rewards and objectives that fulfill them, leading to higher scores at the end of the game. For game comparisons, the first comparison I make is with some games designed by one or more of these designers. First is Newton, a design both by Luciani and Mangone. Both games have a very similar vibe where you are advancing on certain tracks to gain benefits and to play through to ultimately crown the victor of whoever has the most victory points. However, the slight differences include more of a hand management action selection mechanism used in Newton versus worker placement in Darwin's Journey, among others. There's also a comparison to make with Barrage, as that is a design by Simone Luciani, and the comparison to Barrage to Darwin's Journey comes through with the tight worker placement. Both utilize that mechanism, and resource management as well can be tight. Although Barrage is a little bit more confrontational, I would say, than Darwin's Journey is, there's still interaction found between both games, but Barrage has more of a negative confrontational aspect to it when you build dams in front of other players. I would say that the complexity level of Darwin's Journey matches more with Barrage than it does with Newton. I think Newton is a little bit more of a straightforward game. The second game I want to compare is actually Tapestry. I thought of Tapestry because of the track advancement aspect of both games, as they are crucial in both games to accomplish your goals and to obtain the most victory points. I thought both games were similar in a sense that the actions that you are taking in Tapestry, the actions that you take along these tracks of actions that you select, versus the worker placement spots that you have in Darwin's Journey, felt similar in the way that they became increasingly better and more efficient over time, And that was a part of the journey in both games, is to find ways and advance or elevate the way that you take efficient actions to make the game seem a little bit more bombastic as you go along. In both games, I felt the need to sacrifice advancement in a few areas to focus on some others because of the tight economy and resources that you have in both games, thus creating a synergy of actions that will net you the most points at the end of the game based off of a calculated decision at the beginning of the game based off of where certain objectives are, and like in Tapestry, what civilization you have, what home board you have, etc., what Tapestry cards are available, etc. And so a lot of forward planning is rewarded and benefited in both games, I feel. And players who can strategically plan nearly the whole game from the start pretty well, I think ultimately score higher. The third game I want to compare is Dead Reckoning. I haven't played Dead Reckoning in a while, but what I do remember from that game is the customization that you have to your own crew member cards via the clear card crafting aspect that is found in other John D. Clare games like Mystic Vale. In Darwin's Journey, you have that similar sense of creating a customizable worker to place onto the board by attaching those wax seals next to it, not only giving it a wide variety of places it can go on, but you can also tack on the same color of waxes to that worker to make it better at taking certain actions. And so I like the individualization that comes with the way that you handle worker placement or upgrading your workers, as is found in both games. And finally, my Rosenberg pick and comparison for Darwin's Journey is Hallertau. The main mechanical comparison that I make is the way that worker placement is again handled. Both games require you to make tough decisions that ultimately lead you to taking actions that another player has occupied in a similar space, making it more costly to do so. You're not usually disallowed to place a worker in that area, but it will cost you either more workers in Hallertau or money in Darwin's Journey to take that action. And so it adds to the tough decisions that you need to make, whether to take a cheaper action or to pay up and take a more expensive action ultimately for your benefit. So that, in addition to the fact that there feels like there is some customization going on in Hallertau with your workers as well, mostly in the form of quantity, as you can gain more workers as you progress along in the game versus the quality of workers that you find in Darwin's Journey, once again with those wax seals. For peer review, going over some of the reviews that people have made on Board Game Geek in regard to Darwin's Journey, for those who really enjoy the game and rated it highly, they praise the variable setup of the game, the strategic depth, tackled with tough tactical decisions each turn as you bump up in each other's workers in similar areas of the worker placement board, especially at higher player counts, was very enjoyable to some. The components and the look of the game are praised as well, and to some the rules burden is immense, and it takes a few plays to really understand what is going on, but once you do master those rules, the gameplay is smooth and interesting every time you play. And as far as strategy, to some there are multiple viable ways to win the game, which also add to the replayability. Some people who had concerns with the game, and the caveat is that the comments on Board Game Geek went as low as 6 out of 10, and so there weren't a lot of people who commented negatively about the game in a really negative way. But for some, the gameplay was too restrictive, without as much ability to explore on the tracks as they would have liked when compared to games such as Marco Polo, which allow for greater exploration. This mechanically was frustrating, but also it didn't tie into the theme as well as some other games do. And one could say that this game is a very abstracted Euro-style worker placement, track advancement, efficiency game, with the theme of Darwin's Journey being taken aback and being abstracted in that sense. Not a lot of this game stands out as unique among other games because of that. It is a mechanically sound game, but otherwise it is another puzzle, efficiency puzzle, that you are presented to solve. The analysis paralysis is very high in this game, and that is not surprising considering its complexity, especially if you are newer to the game and when you first lay out the game and have its variable setup and trying to parse out what the best strategy is. There can be a lot of analysis there, in addition to tactical decisions that you make during the game. Some additional thoughts and explanations for the mini expansions and modules and solo play in this game. First, there is a Fireland major expansion to this game. This adds a new map to play on, scenarios to play through, and the concept of a time tracker. You can lose and gain time according to actions you take, and if you have too much time to spare, at the end of the game you lose points. I find this very similar to the Beagle ship tracker aspect of this game, where at the end of every round, if you are not caught up to the HMS Beagle with your own ship on the navigation track, you lose points after you have gained some end-round objective points. The time track reminds me of another game, another Rosenberg game called Mercator, where there is a timing aspect to put pressure on different strategies and different tactical decisions that you make, whether to use a lot of time to take an action to travel across the board for resources that you need in the moment, versus when to hold on to them and take perhaps less efficient actions. And so that adds a little bit more complexity and tougher decisions to Darwin's Journey, in addition to games like Mercator, which I found enjoyable. In addition, you have the Animal Companion mini expansion, which gives you animal cards at the beginning of the game to not only give you resources at the beginning of the game, but also a one-time use during the game, which is great for new players. The Great Ship mini expansion adds cards that give players benefits, as they are awarded to players that are the furthest or on the furthest right aspect of the turn tracker. And so essentially it gives a little bit of a boost to those who are running a little bit further behind on the turn track every round. There is the Pirate Ship mini expansion, which adds the feature that campsites and places on the tracks are a little bit more lucrative, awarding more gold in the form of treasure. But there is a pirate ship lurking, and as it roams around, and if you are in the same region as it is at the end of the round, you lose some gold. Finally, there are some scenarios for the base game, similar to that of the Fireland expansion, that are given for the base game and the base map, where you can set it up and tailor the game experience to be a little bit different every time. Finally, some thoughts on the solo play. I thought the Automa solo Alfred was very fun. I enjoyed the fact that the solo player Alfred felt like another player in the game, as you managed their resources and gave them points based off of where they were progressing on the different tracks and etc. It wasn't the worst Automa to learn how to operate. It wasn't necessarily easy as well, but the rulebook for the solo version is somewhat short, and I would say that the operability is a little bit smoother than in games such as Barrage. So I do endorse the solo play, and I thought it was enjoyable and easily attainable in one or two plays. My conclusion for this game is that this is a highly rated game from Star Designers with a great pedigree of games, and obviously they've made a fantastic game that people highly regard, just based off of the comments that were made on Board Game Geek, as well as its placement and overall rating at this time. However, for me personally, it takes a lot for me to enjoy a Euro-style game these days, as I find a lot of similarities among Euro-style games as I play them. For me, the theme of Darwin's Journey didn't shine through enough. It felt like an efficiency puzzle with abstracted tracks and tight worker placement, which is fun in and of itself, but not enough to entice me to replay it again. And if you've heard me before, I'm not the biggest fan of tracks in a game, as I feel that it abstracts the game a little bit too much for my tastes. I find that the more I play Euro-style games, the more I enjoy interaction as well as thematic tie-ins to the mechanisms of the game. For example, another Rosenberg game, Ediwa, is a wonderful example of theme and gameplay synergy, where the actions that you take in the game represent the theme of fruit bats in Africa, essentially. Even though the gameplay isn't as complex, or perhaps as rewarding or as replayable as most find Darwin's Journey, I appreciated and found it a lot more fun to experience in Ediwa. I think games like Barrage catch my interest more because of that interaction, to the point where it's a more cutthroat game, where, as in Darwin's Journey, you're paying money to use other people's spots, perhaps taking objective tiles or seals or what have you from other players before they can, but that's the limit of the interaction that you have, versus in Barrage, where actions that you take do prevent other people from gaining resources or advancing up the scoring track in the way that they would hope. And so it does feel more cutthroat, and it alludes to more replayability for me, because I feel like the more I can prevent very negative actions from happening to me, and to be able to mitigate my way and push my way into the competition for those points better, it helps me feel like I'm progressing at my strategy in the game, and it helps me feel like I'm becoming a better player versus the rewarding feeling of just solving a puzzle more efficiently than someone else. Strategically, I felt that Darwin's Journey focuses most on researching animals and plants and sending them to the museum for points on the theory of evolution track. Even though some people say other strategies are viable, it seems to me that this is the most lucrative way to score points, and this is probably the most thematic tie-in to the game with the mechanisms at play. I like that the game has a focus on researching animals and bringing them to the museum, if this is indeed the main way to score points in the game. I find that games that have a central goal that players are racing to achieve first, or to achieve them in creative ways, creates a more fun experience for me, and so I appreciate this fact in Darwin's Journey. While I enjoyed my experience with this game, if this game came out, say, on a digital format like Board Game Arena, I think I would definitely play it a few more times to see if something entices me to come back to it more often, but I believe that I would be content after another one or two plays, and I think that would be it for me. But who knows, time will tell if Darwin's Journey becomes more exciting for me to play. And those are my first impressions on Darwin's Journey. Thank you for consulting with us, and hope you schedule an appointment with us real soon. Take care.